two of the most recognized figures in the world. One is a king shaped by centuries of royal tradition. The other is a president known for ignoring convention. Yet behind closed doors, these two men have met more than once. What really happens in those rooms? That is the part most people never hear about. The story begins in June 2019, when Donald Trump arrived in the United Kingdom for what became one of the most watched and debated presidential visits in recent history. Queen Elizabeth II was the official host, and the event was impossible to ignore. There was a ceremonial welcome with full military honours, a state banquet at Buckingham Palace, a private lunch with the Queen, and non-stop global media coverage that kept the world focused on London. Outside, thousands gathered, and large protests took place alongside the official events, making the visit far more than a routine diplomatic trip. But what happened away from the cameras mattered even more. During those meetings, Trump sat down with the man who was then the Prince of Wales. According to reports from the BBC and other outlets, their conversation quickly turned to climate change. Trump later confirmed that the issue took up a large part of their discussion and described it as one of the main subjects they talked about. That detail alone shows the quiet tension beneath the surface of their relationship. Charles has built much of his public life around environmental issues. For decades, long before it became widely accepted in politics, he warned about environmental damage, supported sustainability, and used his position to push world leaders toward action. Trump's views on these same issues have been very different. He has shown doubt, reversed policies, and taken a very different view of what science requires and what governments should do for the future. Two men, one subject, almost no common ground. That one conversation helped set the tone for everything that followed, and yet there was no open hostility. That is the part many people find surprising. Despite their deep differences in ideas, Trump has not spoken badly about the king or the royal family. In fact, he has described his time with the British monarchy as a great personal honor and one of the most meaningful experiences of his public life. The respect seems genuine, even if it exists beside serious disagreement. This is where the story becomes especially interesting. Beneath the obvious differences, there is something unexpected linking these two men. Trump has shown a strong and lasting fascination with the ceremony of monarchy. Historic palaces, military display, the visual power and symbolism of centuries-old tradition. These things seem to capture Trump's attention more than many people expected. Charles, shaped completely by that world, represents it in full. They do not share the same worldview, but they do seem to share a respect for the image of power and the weight of history. That thin connection appears in every meeting they have had. Accounts from journalists and analysts who followed their meetings describe the tone between them as polite and controlled, but not relaxed. Every word seemed chosen carefully. Every gesture appeared deliberate. This was not two men casually enjoying a shared interest. It was two major public figures who understood exactly what they represented and spoke with care. Not warmth, not hostility. Something more distant and more calculated than either one. A relationship shaped by awareness of consequences. That gap becomes even clearer when you compare their public roles. Charles has spent his life inside a constitutional system where every public statement is shaped by tradition and every opinion is softened by the limits of a non-political crown. His power is symbolic, gradual, and tied to long-term stability. Trump's political style is almost the opposite: loud, direct, disruptive, and intentionally unfiltered. These are not just personal differences in style. They reflect two very different ideas of leadership, influence, and national representation. Observers who followed their meetings have noted that the divide between them is not mainly personal. It is built into who they are and the roles they play. Nothing either man does is likely to change that. Then came the moment that changed everything. When Queen Elizabeth II died and Charles became king, the meaning of these meetings changed as well. Trump was no longer meeting a prince. He was meeting a king and a head of state. That shift gave every interaction a different weight, made the setting more formal, and placed a clearer diplomatic structure around what could be said and how it could be said. Whatever personal dynamic existed before was now contained within a much stricter framework. In public, both men continued to show the same visible mutual respect that had long defined the relationship. In private, their basic differences remained exactly where they had always been. Now the stakes may be rising again. Attention has turned to the possibility of King Charles making an official visit to the United States while Trump is in office. And if that sounds like a simple ceremonial event, it is not. Visits of this kind are never only ceremonial. Official statements have suggested that any such meeting would be arranged through formal government channels, showing that it would carry diplomatic importance far beyond a handshake or a photo. It would reflect the wider relationship between the United Kingdom and the United States, a partnership often described as special, and one that has needed careful support during times of political tension on both sides. Reports suggest that any meeting would likely focus on continuity and institutional stability rather than personal closeness, because both men understand that the relationship between their countries is bigger than either of them. So where does that leave us? Are Donald Trump and King Charles friends? Not in any real sense. Are they enemies? Not that either. What exists between them is something more unusual and more complex. It is a relationship defined by contrast, held together not by affection, but by history, diplomacy, and a shared understanding that some relationships are too important to be damaged by personal differences. Whatever each man may think in private, both know that their roles demand something bigger than personal opinion. And that, more than anything else, is what makes this relationship one of the most quietly interesting on the world stage.